TOEFL iBT Information Bulletin. For testing in India, policies in this bulletin are in effect from July 2025 through June 2026 and are subject to change without notice. Note: some products and services may be excluded or invalid from purchase when taking advantage of discounts or promotional offers. Consult the promotional terms and conditions when applicable. Contents: Introduction. 3. Registration. 3. General information. 3. Registration deadlines. 3. Test retake policy. 3. Fees and payments. 3. Acceptable forms of payment. 3. Payment policies. 3. Rescheduling and canceling by the test taker. 4. Test fee refunds. 4. Rescheduling and canceling by ETS. 4. Accommodations. 5. Test preparation. 5. Identification. 5. ID document requirements. 6. Primary ID documents. 6. Supplemental ID documents. 6. Unacceptable ID documents. 6. Exceptions and special cases. 7. Multiple part names. 7. Single name, no first/given name or no last/family name. 7. Test takers 15 years of age and younger. 7. Unable to meet ID requirements. 7. Questions about ID documents. 7.
On test day, 7. Arrival and check-in at a test center. 7. ID verification. 7. Test security. 8. Policies and violations. 8. Personal items. 9. Scratch paper. 9. Breaks. 9. TOEFL iBT Home Edition, Additional Policies. 9. Reporting suspicious behavior. 10. Scores. 10. Scoring requirements. 10. Unofficial scores. 10. Canceling your scores. 10. Reinstating your scores. 10. Score validity. 10. Score reports. 11. Score report posting and mailing. 11. Additional score reports. 11. Score reviews. 11. Score verification. 11. Online score verification service. 11. Terms and conditions. 12. Score cancellation policies. 12. Testing irregularities. 13. Holding/canceling scores. 13. Identification discrepancies. 13. Misconduct. 13.
Plagiarism. 14. Invalid scores. 14. Liability. 14. Confidentiality of information. 14. Privacy. 14. At the test administration. 14. Consent. 14. Purpose and use of personal information. Photograph and video. 15. Disclosure. 15. Security and retention. 15. Individual rights. 15. Score information. 1. Introduction. You've made a great choice to take the TOEFL iBT test. As with any ETS test, there are some important rules that must be followed to ensure the test is administered fairly and securely. The contents, terms and conditions off this bulletin form a legally binding contract between you and ETS, and by registering for and/or taking the test, you agree to be bound by these terms and conditions. They are effective for the 2025 to 26 testing year and are subject to change without notice. This bulletin is for individuals testing in India. If you are testing outside of India, refer to www.ets.org/TOEFL.
Registration. General information. You can register for a TOEFL iBT test by creating an ETS account at www.ets.org/TOEFL. Be sure that the name you use exactly matches the Name printed on the identification ID document you will present on the day of the test. A passport is the only primary ID document that is acceptable for admission to a test center or to the home edition test in India. See the Identification section on page 5 for details. Your ETS account is not transferable. Test registrations are also not transferable. Registration deadlines. Regular online registration closes 7 full days before the test date. After that, you will be charged an express fee. Express online registration closes 2 days before the test date. For example, if the test date you want is a Saturday, the last day you can register is Thursday. Test retake policy. There is no limit to the number of times you can take the test, but you cannot take it more than once in a 3-day period. This applies even if you cancelled your scores from a previous test. If you already have a test appointment, you cannot register for another date that is within 3 days of your existing appointment. Fees and payments. Fees for the test and additional services, such as rescheduling, additional score reports, score reviews, and returned payments are listed on the website www.etsindia.org/TOEFL. Note, some products and services may be excluded or invalid from purchase when taking advantage of discounts or promotional offers. Consult the promotional terms and conditions when applicable. Test and test-related fees are inclusive of any goods and services taxes, GST, or similar taxes, consumption taxes. Consumption taxes will be added to the order at the applicable rate when it's placed in jurisdictions where the customer is required to account for any other taxes due. The price remitted to ETS India excludes those taxes.
In those circumstances, it is the sole responsibility of the customer to pay any other taxes to the tax authority. ETS India is not responsible or liable for collecting and remitting any other taxes on the customer's behalf. Acceptable forms of payment: credit cards, all Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Rupee cards. Debit cards, all Visa, MasterCard, Maestro, and Rupee cards. UPI and Bharat QR, all bank and popular apps. Dynamic currency conversion, DCC, for Visa and MasterCard cards issued outside India is also supported. Payment policies. If your payment is declined by your bank or your card provider, you will be charged a fee. Services may be withheld for non-payment of fees. If you don't submit the correct fee, your registration form or order will be returned to you. Your scores won't be released if a payment can't be processed for any reason. ETS reserves the right to add, modify, or remove a payment method at its own discretion and without notice. All payments must be for the full amount due. All outstanding balances with ETS must be paid in full before you can register for any ETS test or order any service. If you change the country of origin after registering for a test, additional fees may apply.
ETS processes payments with your security in mind. This may impact your online experience. Visa. Secure/verified by Visa, MasterCard Secure Code, American Express Safe Key, and Discover. Protect by our 3D Secure 3DS online fraud prevention measures used by card companies as an added layer of security to protect cardholder account information. During the payment process, you may be asked by your card issuing bank to verify cardholder identity by entering an authentication code known only to the cardholder and the bank. Failure to enter the required information or entry of invalid information will result in the sale being rejected. If you don't know your 3D secure passcode or password, and you are not being given the option to enroll online in the bank's pop-up screen, then you will need to contact your bank. Rescheduling and canceling by the test taker. If you need to reschedule or cancel your test, appointment, you must do so at least 4 full days before your test date. For example, if your test appointment is on Saturday, you must reschedule or cancel by Tuesday. If we don't receive your request at least 4 days in advance, your test fee won't be refunded. To cancel or reschedule your test, you must use the online registration system. Test appointments can't be rescheduled or canceled by regular mail or email or at the test center. Test fee refunds. If you cancel your test appointment by the 4-day deadline, you'll automatically receive a refund of 50% of the original test fee you paid. Refunds are issued in the currency that was used to pay for the test. Cash refunds are not available. Refunds are processed automatically when you cancel your test appointment and are credited back to the original method of payment. No refund will be given if you didn't follow the proper registration procedures or didn't present the required identification at the test center.
Test fee refunds. If you cancel your test appointment by the 4-day deadline, you'll automatically receive a refund of 50% of the original test fee you paid. Refunds are issued in the currency that was used to pay for the test. Cash refunds are not available. Refunds are processed automatically when you cancel your test appointment and are credited back to the original method of payment. No refund will be given if you didn't follow the proper registration procedures or didn't present the required identification at the test center. Rescheduling and canceling by ETS. If it becomes necessary for ETS or the TOEFL program to cancel a test administration for reasons beyond its control, including without limitation severe weather conditions, natural disasters such as a flood or a fire, terrorist acts, acts of vandalism, hazardous conditions at the test center, or some other event, you will be contacted by email and/or phone. Be sure to keep the contact information in your ETS account up to date so you can be contacted quickly if needed. Fees that you paid will be transferred to a new test appointment or credited back to your ETS account. Unless ETS or the TOEFL program cancels a test administration at a given test center, it will be conducted as scheduled, barring circumstances preventing prior notification of cancellation, such as a natural disaster or a terrorist act. If you miss a test administration that has not been officially cancelled, you'll be considered absent and won't receive a refund or credit of any kind. If your appointment is rescheduled by ETS before you take the test, you can select a different test date and won't be charged the rescheduling fee.
If you travel to the test center and find out that the testing session has been canceled by ETS, you can reschedule your test at no charge or receive a full refund. Refunds are issued in the currency used to pay for the test and include taxes as applicable. If you take the test and your scores are canceled by ETS, ETS will determine at its sole discretion whether or not you are eligible to retest at no charge or to receive a refund. If ETS cancels a test administration or cancels scores after you take the test and you have incurred travel costs to get to the test center, you may be eligible for reimbursement of reasonable and documented travel expenses for yourself only within 30 days of your test date. When you contact TOEFL services, have the appropriate receipts available and be prepared to provide all of the following information: a name, date of birth, a mailing address, daytime phone number, email address, original test date, test appointment number, a description of the problem, accommodations. Testing accommodations are available for test takers with disabilities or health-related needs who meet ETS requirements. If you are requesting accommodations, you must have them approved before you can register for the test. If seeking accommodations, submit your request as early as possible. Documentation review takes approximately 4 to 6 weeks once your request and complete paperwork have been received at ETS. The 2025-26 TOEFL iBT Bulletin Supplement 4. Test takers with disabilities or health-related needs. Contains contact information, a list of some of the accommodations ETS most frequently approves and provides, and procedures for requesting them. The supplement can be downloaded at www.ets.org/TOEFL. Test takers/IBT/register/disability accommodations. Test preparation. View the full array of official TOEFL iBT prep products created by the test makers at ETS at www.etsindia.org TOEFL.
Please note that once orders are placed for prep products, they cannot be cancelled, and there are no refunds or returns. Identification. You are responsible for having valid and acceptable ID each time you test. It's your responsibility to bring the correct documents and to make sure they're up to date on test day. Otherwise, you won't be able to take the test, and your test fee won't be refunded. Please note, if the test administrator or proctor questions your ID, you may be required to also provide supplemental ID. If your ID document is not written in English language letters and the test center administrator can't read it, you won't be able to take the test. Admission to the test center, or acceptance by a proctor for the home edition test, does not guarantee that the ID you provided is valid or that your scores will be reported. All cases of questionable ID are subject to review and approval by ETS. At a test center, you may be required to show your ID and/or to sign a log at various points throughout the test session, including before and after breaks. For the home edition test, you may need to verify your identity using a mobile app before starting the test. If this applies to you, please verify your identity at least 48 hours before your test time. ID document requirements. Your ID requirements depend on where you plan to take the test and your country of citizenship. Check the requirements for your testing location at www.ets.org. TOEFL/test-takers/IBT/register/ID. With few exceptions, ID documents must meet all of the following requirements. Each ID document must be an original document. Photocopied documents are not acceptable, and documents cannot be presented on a mobile phone or any other device. Be a physical ID, electronic ID issued to a mobile phone or any other electronic device is not acceptable. Be a government-issued national/state/province identity card that is recognized by the country or location where you are a citizen or a permanent resident. Be valid. Expired documents are not acceptable. Show your full name and date of birth, the first/given name and the last/family name on your ID must exactly match the name and date of birth you used when you registered for the test. Include a recent photograph that clearly matches your appearance. Show your signature. The name on your ID and the signature name must match. Primary ID documents. A passport is the only primary ID document that is acceptable for admission to a test center or to the home edition test in India. Supplemental ID documents. You may be required to provide supplemental ID if the test center administrator or proctor for the home edition test questions your primary ID document or if your primary ID is otherwise valid and acceptable, but is missing your full name, photograph, or signature. If you can't provide a supplemental ID that shows your signature, you can present two government-issued IDs with photographs, as long as they're in the same name you used when you registered. Supplemental ID documents cannot be used to resolve last/family name discrepancies. The last/family name on your primary ID must match the name you used when you registered. The following documents are generally acceptable as supplemental ID.
Government-issued ID card, including, but not limited to, those listed under primary ID documents. Earlier in this section. Student ID card. Confirmation of identity letter from your educational institution. This letter must be typed or printed on the original letterhead of the educational institution you attend, and, in addition to meeting all of the ID document requirements that are listed earlier in this section, must include your date of birth and the date issued. Additionally, a school official's signature and the school seal must be present, and both must overlap your photograph. Such letters are valid for 1 year from the date issued. Unacceptable ID documents. The following documents are not acceptable as primary or supplemental ID under any circumstances. Aadhaar card, international driver's license, mobile driver's license, draft classification card, international student ID, credit/debit card of any kind, notary prepared letter or document, birth certificate, social security card, employee ID card, any temporary ID, excluding driver's license, resident card and employment authorization card renewals, diplomatic, consulate, or embassy ID card. Exceptions in special cases. Multiple part names. If the ID document you have contains a multiple part last/family name or a multiple part first/given name, for example, Smith Davis or Miller Thomas, the name and date of birth shown on your ID must exactly match the name and date of birth you used to register for the test, excluding accents and apostrophes. Single name, no first/given name or no last/. Family name. If you only have a first/given name and no last/family name, or you only have a last/family name and no first/given name, enter your name in the last/family names field and check the box near the field. As long as the name in your account is exactly the same as the name on your ID document, you'll be able to take the test.
Test takers 15 years of age and younger. If you are age 15 or younger and are accompanied by a parent or other authorized adult age 18 or older, both you and the authorized adult must present valid, acceptable ID. If you don't think you can meet the ID requirements, contact the Office of Testing Integrity before you register for the test. Unable to meet ID requirements. If you have been granted political asylum, have refugee status, or are otherwise unable to meet the identification requirements, you must contact the ETS Office of Testing Integrity, OTI, at least 7 days before you register for the test. You will need to receive approval from OTI before you can register. You should also be prepared to submit any requested documents to OTI for review prior to receiving approval. If you don't contact OTI before you register, and as a result you are not permitted to take the test or your test scores are withheld and or cancelled, your test fee won't be refunded. Office of Testing Integrity. Email, tsreturns@ets.org. Phone, +1 609 406 5430. Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, except U.S. holidays. Questions about ID documents. For general questions about acceptable ID, call TOEFL services at +1 800 123 9418. On test day. Arrival and check-in at a test center. For tests at a test center, you must arrive at least 30 minutes before your assigned start time to allow for the check-in process. If you arrive or check in after your
Assigned start time, you won't be able to take the test, and your test fee won't be refunded. If you are age 15 or younger when you take the test, we suggest you be accompanied by a parent or other authorized adult age 18 or older, who will be required to complete and sign a release form at the test center. Friends, relatives, and other visitors are not allowed to wait in the test center or be in contact with you while you are taking the test or during breaks, unless you are age 15 or younger. Be prepared to undergo security measures, which may include the use of electronic scanning devices such as handheld metal detector wands and visual inspection for unauthorized testing aids or wearable technology. ID verification. In addition to your required ID verification at the test center may include photographing/video surveillance, fingerprinting/thumbprinting, signature comparison, biometric voice and photo identification, other forms of electronic confirmation. Test security. Test security is extremely important because it helps ensure that scores are valid and fair for everyone. Thereby, ETS has established policies and procedures that test centers, proctors, and test takers must follow.
Policies and violations. If you do not follow the instructions of the test administrator or proctor, you won't be permitted to test, and your test fee won't be refunded. Any violation of security procedures during the test or during a break may result in dismissal from the test, cancellation of your test scores, and or notifying the appropriate authorities. Reports of cheating or fraud will be investigated thoroughly, and offenders may be prosecuted to the full extent of applicable law. Violations include, but are not limited to, the following: taking or attempting to take the test or part of the test for someone else, or having or attempting to have someone else take the test or part of the test for you. Failing to provide acceptable identification, including refusing to allow your photograph to be taken. Obtaining improper access to test content or other information about the test. This includes having test questions or answers in advance of the test administration and bringing pre-knowledge of any test information into the test center in any form, including but not limited to ID documents, prohibited devices, and any other item used as an aid in connection with the test. Using or having any prohibited item or device in your possession in the test center or testing room. See the Personal Items section on page 9. Using any object as an aid in connection with the test, including, without limitation, phones, tablets, watches, pens, scan pens or other scanning devices, calculators, books, pamphlets, notes, unauthorized scratch paper, rulers, highlighter pens, dictionaries, test preparation materials, translators, and any electronic, scanning, listening, recording, photographic or wearable device.
Writing test-related information on clothing, footwear, ID documents, or on any parts of the body. Attempting to give or receive assistance. Communication in any form is not permitted during the test session. Discussion or sharing of test questions or answers is prohibited during the test session, during breaks, and after the test is completed, including communication via text, messages, email, or photographs. Using the scratch paper provided or notes of any kind to prepare your writing responses ahead of time. Attempting to remove scratch paper or a piece of scratch paper from the testing room, or using scratch paper before the test or between test sections. Removing or attempting to remove test content from the test center. Under no circumstances may test content or any part of the test content be removed, reproduced, transmitted, and or disclosed by any means, for example, hard copy, verbally, electronically, to any person or entity. Tampering with a computer. Smoking in the test center, including e-cigarettes, or bringing food and beverages into the testing room, except when approved as a testing accommodation. Bringing a weapon or firearm into the test center. Leaving the test center vicinity without permission. During the test or during breaks. Taking excessive or extended unscheduled breaks. During the test at a test center. Administrators are required to strictly monitor unscheduled breaks and report test takers who take excessive or extended breaks, creating a disturbance. The test administrator has sole discretion in determining what constitutes disruptive behavior. Responding in a threatening or disturbing way to a writing or speaking question, or communicating with ETS or other individuals either verbally or in writing in a threatening or disturbing manner.
Failing to follow any of the test administration regulations contained in this bulletin on the TOEFL website given by the test center administrator or specified in any test materials. Personal items. Personal items other than ID documents are not allowed in the testing room, except for food, beverages, and medication when approved as a testing accommodation. This includes phones, tablets, watches, headphones, and any other electronic, recording, listening, scanning, or photographic devices. If you are seen using or accessing a device and/or transmitting data, including but not limited to text messaging, email, and photographs, your device may be inspected and or confiscated. If you bring a phone with you to the test center, it must be turned off. You cannot access your phone or other devices during the test session. To check messages, make a call, check the time, or for any other reason. To ensure unauthorized items are not brought into the testing room, visual inspection of clothing, footwear, and ID may also be conducted. You may be required to remove your eyeglasses for close visual inspection. The inspection takes a few seconds and will be done at check-in and when you return from breaks. Unless an inspection is required, removal of footwear in the testing room is prohibited. You may be asked to empty your pockets, raise your pant legs above your ankles, and/or pull your sleeves above your wrists for visual inspection. Such inspections are routine before each entry into the testing room. You can request that the inspections be performed by a staff member of the same gender as you and/or in an area sheltered from the view of other people. Test center staff will make every effort to accommodate such requests, but ETS cannot guarantee that all test centers will have the necessary staff and space available.
All face masks, jewelry, such as large necklaces, tie clips and cufflinks, ornate clips, combs, barrettes, headbands, and other hair accessories must be removed prior to entering the exam. Wedding and engagement rings may remain on. Clothing and other personal items, including but not limited to any hair accessories, neckties, bow ties, hats, scarves, jackets, and outerwear, are subject to inspection. At the test center, you will receive instructions from test center staff regarding where to store personal items. You cannot have access to your personal items during the test sessions, except for food, non-alcoholic beverages, and medication, which you can access during a break. Any personal item you bring into the testing room may be confiscated by test center staff. Test center administrators are not permitted to collect or hold your phones, watches, or any other devices. Test centers and ETS assume no responsibility for personal items, including watches, jewelry, or devices that you choose to bring to the test centers. Scratch paper. The test center administrator will provide you with pencils and scratch paper. You may not bring your own scratch paper to the test. You can't request more scratch paper until you have used and returned all the pages you initially received. You may not write on anything other than the Scratch paper provided, for example, the computer, workstation, or your ID document. Scratch papyrus not be used before the test, between sections, or during breaks. At the end of the test session, you'll be required to return all scratch paper, in its entirety, to the test center administrator. Breaks. There are no scheduled breaks in the TOEFL iBT test. TOEFL iBT Home Edition, Additional Policies. If you take a TOEFL Home Edition test, you must select your country of residence during registration. If it is determined that you selected a country other than your country of residence at the time you take the TOEFL Home Edition test, we reserve the right to automatically cancel your scores. The My TOEFL Home Dashboard, https://toeflibt.ets.org. Welcome, has all the information you need to prepare for test day. My TOEFL Home allows you to download the TOEFL test app and run the equipment check. Review the Home Edition rules and guidelines. Learn how to set up your second camera and verify your identity, if that applies to you. On test day, you can begin the check-in process up to 15 minutes before your scheduled time. You also have up to 30 minutes after your scheduled time to begin checking in. If you haven't checked in by that time, your test will be cancelled and your fee won't be refunded. Have the materials you'll need for your test session, including a cell phone or handheld mirror for check-in, a mobile device, if a second camera applies to you, note-taking materials, which can be 0. One small desktop whiteboard with an erasable marker or 0. One blank piece of paper inside a transparent sheet protector with an erasable marker. The paper must not be removed from the sheet protector at any time during the test. Before your test, you must disable any screen sharing or remote access software such as Zoom, Skype, TeamViewer, Microsoft Teams, and Apple Remote Desktop, Grammarly, and spell check. It must remain disabled throughout the test. Make sure that the software will not open automatically during the test. You must be alone in a room with no one else entering during the test, and all doors must be closed before testing begins.
Your entire session will be recorded and monitored by a human proctor, and your photo will be taken. You must remain in view of the proctor. You should avoid doing anything that may look suspicious, like talking out loud or looking away from the screen. Unscheduled breaks are not allowed. Reporting suspicious behavior. ETS takes test security very seriously. Although TOEFL tests are administered under strict supervision and security measures, testing irregularities can still occur. Please contact ETS as soon as possible after the test to report any irregular behavior that is either observed or reported to you. For example, if you see someone copying from another test taker, taking a test or part of a test for someone else, having access to test questions or answers before the test session, or using notes or unauthorized aids. Any information you report will be held in the strictest confidence. Reports of cheating or fraud will be investigated thoroughly, and offenders may be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Mail. Report cheating at TOEFL.org. Phone +1 609 406 5430. Scores. Scoring requirements. To receive scores for the test, you must answer at least one question each in the reading and listening sections, and respond to at least one speaking task and one writing task. Unofficial scores. At the end of the test, you will be able to view your unofficial scores for the listening and reading sections to give you an idea of how you did on the test. You will also see the date you can expect your official scores. It is possible that your unofficial scores will differ from the official scores that are posted to your account due to the The statistical analysis performed after the test to ensure accuracy.
Canceling your scores. At the end of the test, you have the option to either have your scores reported or cancel them. If you choose to cancel your scores, you must cancel all sections. If you choose to have your scores reported, they become part of your record and will be reported to you and any score recipients you designated. Once you choose to report your scores, they cannot be canceled. If you choose to cancel your scores, they won't be reported to you or to any score recipients, and you won't receive a refund. Reinstating your scores. If you cancel your scores at the end of the test but then change your mind, your canceled scores can be reinstated via your ETS account within 60 days after your test date for a fee. Your scores will be reinstated and reported to you and any designated institutions approximately 3 weeks after receipt of your request and payment. Score validity. TOEFL scores remain valid for 2 years after the test date because language proficiency can change considerably. In a short period of time, TOEFL scores more than 2 years old can't be reported or verified. Score reports. Your TOEFL iBT test fee entitles you to your scores posted to your ETS account. If you choose to obtain a paper copy of your scores, select that option when you register or at any time until 10 p.m. local test center time on the day before you take the test. There may be fees applied when requesting paper copies of your score report. Your My Best scores, which combine your best scores for each section from all your valid TOEFL iBT scores from the last 2 years, allowing you to show your best performance in each skill area. Access to a PDF of your test taker score report that you can download and print. Up to 4 score reports that ETS will send to the institutions or agencies you designated before you took the test. You can add, delete, or change score recipients until 10 p.m. local test center time on the day before your test. After that time, you will be charged a fee for each score report sent. Denote: only tests taken before January 21st, 2026 and TOEFL iBT Australia are currently approved for Australian visa purposes. Score report posting and mailing. TOEFL iBT tests taken before January 21st, 2026 and TOEFL iBT Australia scores are posted to your ETS account about 4 to 8 days after you take the test. For TOEFL iBT tests taken on or after January 21st, 2026, your scores are posted to your ETS account approximately 3 days after you take the test. You will receive an email letting you know that your scores are posted. Score delivery time to your designated recipients varies based on how they receive scores, and paper copies are subject to delivery service specifications. Additional score reports. You can send additional score reports to institutions for the fee. Score reports can be ordered online in your ETS account. Designated institutions can't be changed or deleted after you place your order. No refunds can be made. Score reviews. You can request a review of your speaking and or writing section via your ETS account up to 30 days after your test date for a fee. You can't request a score review if you have already requested that your scores be sent to any institution or agency. Your TOEFL iBT test speaking and writing responses will be reviewed by scoring specialists. If your original score is confirmed, you'll be notified by letter or email within 3 weeks. If the review results in a change in your scores, whether higher or lower, you will receive your new scores. The revised scores will become your official scores for that test date. Score verification. Institutions have the ability to verify scores sent directly to them by test takers. If there is a discrepancy between the official scores recorded at ETS and scores you submit, the institution or agency will be asked to provide ETS with a copy of what you submitted. At the request of the institution or agency, ETS will report the official scores as well as any previous scores recorded for you within the last 2 years. ETS or its Authorized representative will also provide your score information at the request of any institution or agency that has a copy of your score posting or your test taker. Score report. Online score verification service. The following terms and conditions supplement all other terms and conditions, disclosures, policies, and agreements relating to TOEFL test scores reported by ETS, including but not limited to the ETS privacy and security policy and the TOEFL iBT Information Bulletin, all as amended from time to time, collectively. TOEFL program documents.
You can view the current version of the ETS privacy and security policy at www.ets.org/legal/privacy. The ETS Data Manager allows entities that contract with ETS for access, including governmental immigration offices, organizations, to verify the scores of tests provided by ETS under the TOEFL trademark. Score. Data provided through the ETS Data Manager provides identifying information about the test taker. Some test takers provide their TOEFL score information directly to organizations. The Verify TOEFL Scores function allows these organizations to view and verify the scores by registering for a TOEFL test, downloading a TOEFL Information Bulletin, completing the confidentiality agreement on test day after having an opportunity to review it, or by providing your TOEFL test appointment number, your scores, or your test taker score report to an organization. You agree to all the terms and conditions herein without modification by you. Terms and conditions. 1. Your initiation of the Verify TOEFL Scores function in the ETS Data Manager. If you provide your TOEFL program appointment number and date of birth to an organization, that organization will be able to view and verify your scores and related data. Do not provide that information unless you want to allow the organization to access your score data using the ETS Data Manager.
2. Score data, organization access. Using the service, a member organization will be able to view, copy, and use your name, gender, photograph, date of birth, appointment number, ID information including passport number or national ID number, test date, and test scores including your total score, your scores for the reading, listening, speaking, and writing sections, and your My Best scores. Read your writing samples and listen to your speaking samples captured during the test administration. Collectively, the score data. TS reserves the right to determine whether more or less data should be provided from time to time in its good faith discretion. Any use of your score data by the organization should be pursuant to its privacy and security policy, if any, rather than to the ETS policy. ETS contracts with these organizations to use the information only to verify the TOEFL scores, but ETS does not control the organizations. 3. Limitations. You acknowledge that if you give an organization your appointment number for a TOEFL test that is more than 2 years old, the organization will not be able to verify your scores. You agree that ETS supplies the ETS Data Manager and the score data ASIS, and with all faults, all disclaimers, damage, and remedy exclusions and limitations and other provisions of the TOEFL program documents apply to the ETS Data Manager and the score data.
4. Other. Except as impacted by the ETS Data Manager. The terms and conditions of the TOEFL program documents will remain in full force and effect. ETS reserves the right to share data with institutions and agencies for verification purposes outside of the ETS Data Manager. You agree that ETS may amend or change these terms and conditions from time to time in its discretion by providing notice in the TOEFL section of the website at www.ets.org or in any of the TOEFL program documents, or by emailing or otherwise giving notice to you. If you provide your TOEFL information to an organization after the effective date of an amendment, or if, before the effective date, you fail to withdraw your TOEFL information from an organization or otherwise fail to instruct it not to access your score data, you will be deemed to have consented to the amendment. The foregoing does not restrict ETS from using another method for amendment under any of the TOEFL program documents. Score cancellation policies. ETS and the TOEFL program strive to report scores that accurately reflect the performance of every test taker by giving test takers equivalent opportunities to demonstrate their abilities and preventing any test takers from gaining an unfair advantage over others. ETS reserves the right to cancel any test score when in its sole judgment there is substantial evidence that the score is invalid. Scores can be cancelled as a result of test taker behavior or irregularities that affect testing integrity. ETS can also take other actions as it deems appropriate, including banning the test taker from taking any future ETS test and referring the matter to law enforcement authorities when, in ETS's judgment, a testing irregularity occurs, there is an apparent discrepancy in a test taker's identification, the test taker may have engaged in misconduct, including without limitation having someone else take the test for him, her, obtaining improper access to test questions or answers via the internet, email, SMS, text messaging or posting, disclosing test questions or answers to third parties in chat rooms, message boards, or forums, SMS text message, or any other method. Plagiarism or copying or communication, or the score is invalid for another reason. ETS reserves the right to share any and all information in its possession about a test taker and the terms and conditions of test taking with any third party, including, but not limited to, a. any entity which ETS recognizes as an authorized user of test scores, including without limitation any entity to which ETS reports test scores at the test taker's request, and b. any government agency with responsibility for administration or enforcement of U.S. criminal and/or immigration laws. When ETS cancels a test score that has already been reported, it notifies score recipients that the score has been cancelled and may also explain why the score has been cancelled.
Testing irregularities. Testing irregularities refers to problems with the administration of a test. Testing irregularities can result from the actions of test takers, test center administrators, ETS, or natural or man-made causes. When testing irregularities occur, they may affect an individual or groups of test takers. Such problems include, without limitation, administrative errors such as improper timing, improper seating, defective materials such as improper test forms, or defective equipment, improper access to test content, and other disruptions of test administrations such as natural disasters or other emergencies. When testing irregularities occur, ETS may decline to score the test or cancel the test scores. When it is appropriate to do so, test takers will be given the opportunity to take the test again without charge as soon as reasonably possible. Holding/canceling scores. If there is information that ETS considers sufficient to indicate that you have engaged in any activity that affects score validity, ETS may hold your scores for investigation. If your scores are held, you can't send score reports to any institution or agency until the investigation is complete. In addition, when information exists that ETS considers sufficient that the administration of a test Did not comply with test administration regulations? Some or all scores from that administration at that test center may be held or cancelled. ETS reserves the right to take any action, including, but not limited to, dismissing you from the test center, holding or cancelling your scores, and banning you from future testing for failure to comply with test administration regulations or the instructions of test center administrators or proctors. If you're dismissed from the test center or your scores are cancelled, those scores won't be reported and your test fee won't be refunded. ETS may also provide information about your score cancellation to law enforcement and the institutions you chose to receive your scores, including visa-granting agencies. ETS will also exercise its right to cancel any test score when, in its sole judgment, substantial evidence of pre-knowledge of test content is found. The test retake policy will be enforced even if a violation is not immediately identified, e.g., inconsistent registration information. If the violation is identified after registration but before the test administration, the testing appointment will be cancelled and test fees will be forfeited. If the violation is identified after test scores have been reported, the invalid scores will be cancelled, score recipients will be notified of the cancellation and test fees will be forfeited. ETS is monitoring reuse of devices and testing locations for unauthorized purposes. Frequent, inappropriate reuse of shared testing devices and common testing locations may result in score delay and/or score cancellation and could impact your eligibility to take future ETS exams.
Identification discrepancies. When, in the judgment of ETS or of the test center, administrators or home edition proctors, there is a discrepancy in your ID information, you may be dismissed from the test center. In addition, ETS may decline to score your test or may hold or cancel your test scores if the documents or your photo or biometric samples from test day can't be validated, or if ETS has evidence that you were not the person who appeared for the test or didn't take the entire test yourself. ETS will also cancel scores, ban the test taker from any future testing, and notify any score recipients of the cancellation if fraudulent activity is detected after your scores have been reported. If your scores are cancelled, your test fee won't be refunded. Misconduct. When ETS or a test center administrator finds that there is misconduct in connection with a test, test takers may be dismissed from the test center and/or ETS may decline to score their tests or may withhold and ultimately cancel their scores. If your scores are cancelled, your test fee won't be refunded. Misconduct includes, but is not limited to, non-compliance with the procedures and regulations. In the Test Security section on page 8 of this bulletin.
Plagiarism. ETS reserves the right to cancel your scores if, in its judgment, there is evidence that a writing or speaking response includes text that is substantially similar to that found in other TOEFL test responses, or quotations, or paraphrasing of language or ideas from published or unpublished sources, including sources from the Internet, or sources provided by any third party, is used without attribution. Such responses don't reflect the independent speaking or compositional writing skills that the test is designed to measure. Invalid scores. ETS may also cancel scores if, in its judgment, there is substantial evidence that they're invalid for any other reason. Substantial evidence means evidence that is sufficient to persuade a reasonable person. The substantial evidence standard is lower, i.e., requires less proof than the reasonable doubt, clear and convincing or preponderance of the evidence standards. Evidence of invalid scores may include, without limitation, discrepant handwriting, discrepant photographs, unusual answer patterns, or inconsistent performance on different parts of the test. Score cancellation decisions are not subject to appeal to ETS. For test takers within the United States, before canceling scores based on substantial evidence of invalidity, ETS notifies the test taker in writing about its concerns, gives the test taker an opportunity to submit information that addresses those concerns, considers any such information submitted and offers the test taker a choice of options. The options may include voluntary score cancellation, a voucher for a future test, or arbitration in accordance with the ETS standard. Arbitration agreement. The arbitration option is available only to test takers who test in the United States at the time of testing.
If at any time before, during or after review of questionable scores, ETS finds that misconduct has occurred under in connection with a test, ETS may treat the matter under its misconduct procedures. In that event, the options available under the rescheduling and cancelling by ETS or the testing irregularities section, as applicable, will not be available even if those options were previously offered. Liability. ETS shall have no liability to any test taker for damages or claims of any kind whatsoever that the test taker may assert against ETS for holding or cancelling scores, for not reporting scores, for banning the test taker from future testing, or for disclosure of test taker information pursuant to ETS's rights as set forth in this document. Confidentiality of information. Privacy. ETS and the TOEFL program take the privacy of our test takers seriously and recognize your right to control the information about you that is stored by us. Our policies are designed to safeguard that information from unauthorized disclosure. Because of laws protecting confidentiality and privacy, only you can register yourself for a test or make inquiries regarding your registration or your test scores. ETS takes reasonable precautions to protect the integrity of your personal information provided in connection with the registration process, as well as any information generated internally that is specifically pertinent to you, and to keep this information secure. Your private information will not be made available to anyone but you, ETS, including the employees, agents, contractors, or professional advisors of ETS, the educational institutions or agencies you indicate before you take the test, and any person or entity required or authorized by law to receive this information. At the test administration, you must show the required ID to be admitted to test, and your photograph will be taken. See that identification section on page 5.
Consent. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary in any other ETS or ETS affiliates, ETS, we, us, our materials, or agreements with you, you consent to the terms and conditions herein by registering for or taking an ETS test, creating an account or our website, providing survey information, requesting one of our services, or completing an order or submitting payment information. You agree that we have the right to obtain, store, use, and transmit your personal information, including your full name, your home address, email address, phone number, passport number, biometric data such as fingerprints, audio recordings and video files, your answers to background information questions, the test you're taking, test date, payment information, and how you specifically use our website. Purpose and use of personal information. Photograph and video. Your personal information can be used to complete any registration, purchase, or other transaction you request, improve our products and services, and identify Develop and offer new or expanded products and services. Improve and personalize your experience on the website. Notify you about updates, products, services, and/or special offers from ETS, its affiliates, and selected third parties. Ask you to participate in brief surveys or provide other information. Generate aggregate statistical studies and conduct research ourselves or jointly with others related to our products and services and the use of our website. Based upon your specific relationships with us, we may use your personal information in ways described in more detail in one or more other agreements.
Additionally, you consent to the transfer of your personal information within and outside of your country of residence and outside of the location where you take the test. We disclose your personal information to certain third parties with whom we have a direct or indirect business or contract relationship to provide products and services you have requested. You will have the ability to opt out of receiving certain communications from us, including voicemail or email. If you don't opt out immediately, but later decide that you would prefer not to receive email communications from us, please contact the TOEFL program through www.etsindia.org/TOEFL. Remember, however, that we may still send you emails or call you in order to provide a product or service that you request. Disclosure. Your personal information may be disclosed to those third parties who provide services to ETS, provided that they have contractually agreed to use the personal information only as needed to provide the services. By electing to report your scores at the end of your test, you authorize ETS to report your scores to you and to any entity or person authorized or required by law to receive this information. Unless you cancel your scores at the end of the test, your scores will be reported. Any information you provided as part of registration may be used to report your scores or to contact you regarding test or program-related issues. Security and retention. ETS, the TOEFL program and their service providers shall at all times protect your personal information with operational, administrative, technical, and physical security safeguards. ETS will retain your scores for 2 years from the test date. After 2 years, all test taker information and scores are removed. If you took the TOEFL test more than 2 years ago, you'll need to take the test again to have scores provided to you by an institution or an agency. Individual rights. At any time, you can request access to and correction of your personal information. Make any inquiries, requests, or complaints about the use of your personal information. Withdraw your consent to the processing of your personal data. However, if you exercise this right, you may not be able to take any further tests and your scores may be cancelled. Requests, inquiries, or complaints should be directed to TOEFL services at TOEFL support for India at ets.org. Score information. Your score information is intended only for you and your designated score recipients. ETS will not release your score information at the request of institutions or agencies except for use in research studies, scoring and statistical analysis approved by the TOEFL program, and that preserve your anonymity. When information is required under compulsion of legal process, in which case your score record and the documents that are retained at ETS, including but not limited to photos and documents completed at check-in on test day, may be released to third parties, such as government agencies, parties to a lawsuit, etc., if requested pursuant to a subpoena or required by applicable laws.
Note that whenever ETS has confirmed that you have submitted a TOEFL score directly to any educational institution or agency in satisfaction of one of their requirements, ETS will respond to requests from that recipient for score verification. Your responses may be used for rater training and in the development of new test preparation materials. Test taker information, such as your name and address, is not included when scored responses are used for these purposes. Rater training is essential to ensure that tests are scored in a fair and consistent manner. The use of your responses will benefit future test takers by helping to improve the training of raters, just as the scoring of your test will benefit from the use of prior test takers' responses. Test preparation materials demonstrate how the test is administered and the skills necessary to succeed.